everyone. My name is Fernando Delgado. I'm the coordinator of the Strategic Legal Administration from ESCR-Net, and it's an honor to have this meeting with the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Paraguay. I will now give the floor to Ms. Doctora Dos Santos of the Commission. But first of all, let me just explain how VoiceBoxer works. We are working with simultaneous interpreters today, so only one person can speak at a time. I beg of you to speak slowly so that the interpreters will have the time they need. On my end, I control who I give the floor to. If you want to take the floor, click on your hand sign on the screen. Once you do so, a list is created to see who asked for the floor first. To communicate, you can also use the chat box to your right. If you have technical difficulties with the software, please press on the interrogation sign, on the question sign on your screen. It will take about 1 hour of the Inter-American proposal today. Just a moment. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience and understanding regarding technical difficulties. Apparently, they are all solved now, so it's a pleasure to start this online seminar. My name is Fernando Delgado. I coordinate the litigation group of the ESCR-Net, and it's a pleasure to have this seminar on SIMORE Plus, Paraguay, and the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. I will give the floor to Dr. Fernanda Dos Santos of the Executive Secretariat of the Commission. But first of all, I would like to briefly explain how the VoiceBoxer platform works. We have simultaneous interpreters, so only one person can speak at a time. If you want to ask for the floor, press on the sign of the hand sign on your screen. It will automatically generate a list of who goes first according to the received clicks. You can also use a chat box to your right. If you have technical difficulties with the software, please click on the question sign on the left corner of your screen. We have about 30 minutes to talk about the SIMORE and 30 minutes for comments and questions on the civil society. I am sorry for the delay, but thanks to the interpreters, we will try to use the whole time we have advantage of. I would like to thank everyone for being here today. We have several members of the civil society. If you want to introduce yourself, please use the chat box. I will not present everyone here because of time, and we have a delay, so thank you, everyone. And I will now give the floor to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, to the Executive Secretariat, Dr. Fernanda. Okay, hello. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to participate in this webinar, this online seminar. As the Paraguay, we've signed a agreement accord to work with this recommendation platform. This was one of the commitments that the Commission has established in their 2017-2021 goals in order to have more transparency and to give a public channel established by the several mechanisms. We have the cases mechanisms and the monitoring. For us, it's a pleasure to carry out this system presentation that was developed by Paraguay and that has been a good practice recognized by the UN and by several countries. These countries have also collaborated in a strategic collaboration from the region. This system has been duplicated in 6 countries of the region, and the idea is now to reestablish this adaptation into the Inter-American system. So it's a huge pleasure to have the alliance, the partnership with Paraguay, and to introduce to you the Paraguayan system. And at the end of this online seminar, we would love to receive any suggestions and comments that will help us to think and to concretize the future of SIMORE and the Inter-American region. Thank you, Fernando, and thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you, Fernanda. And now I would like to give the floor to our members of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Paraguay. Good morning, everyone. It's a huge pleasure to be here with you today. Of course, we would love to be in Washington right now, but due to several issues, we couldn't be there this week. But we found this fantastic platform, this fantastic tool that we're just learning to use in order to communicate with you and the civil organizations. This was organized by the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights, so thank you very much. And we'd like to take the opportunity to introduce to you SIMORE, and specifically our online follow-up tool, which is SIMORE Plus. As Fernanda already said, SIMORE Plus for Paraguay has been a huge advancement in the follow-up of recommendations on human rights. For us, we have collaborated with Chile, Uruguay, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, and Argentina and Costa Rica as countries who have asked for our collaboration with the system. So it's a huge national pride. This is one of the most important tools on collaboration that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has. It was elaborated in December last year. We signed a framework agreement with the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights to have a Inter-American SIMORE in the next month. So we have been working very closely with the Commission. We have shared our interests as a state level and the civil society level. The Commission explained to us that we need to create a system that has to do only with the follow-up of international recommendations. And so they chose us. We now have the Plus, SIMORE Plus, due to the conversations we've had with the civil associations. We had an event in Assumption last week to talk about this system. We gathered with the civil associations in the country, and now we have the opportunity to share it with other civil societies that were called on by the Commission. So in my introduction, I just wanted to present to you the work we do in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in terms of human rights, and I would like to introduce to you Mr. Santiago Fiorio, who is one of the creators of the system, and we also have Mr. Kutsum, who works on the IT and who created SIMORE in our country. So these are my two colleagues. My name is Mariana, and I am the chief of the General Unit of Human Rights of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Paraguay, and it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I will give the floor to Santiago. Hello, everyone. As she mentioned, my name is Santiago Fiorio. I work in the Universal Systems area of the Human Rights Department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I'm in charge of the system and implementing the technical cooperation program. We were called on to do a brief presentation on how this system works, and so I would like to give you a brief demonstration on how it works online. So right now, we are going to share our screen with you, and we will give you a brief presentation that we developed. Is it possible to share our screen? Or Fernando, could I just send you the PowerPoint presentation we have? Hello. Yes, it is possible. Usually it's possible to have a PowerPoint presentation on VoiceBoxer. However, I needed it before. I would have needed it yesterday, actually, so I apologize, but technically, right now, it's not possible to do so. Okay, no problem. So we can skip through the presentation and not sharing our screen. So this recommendation system is a system that publishes on an online platform all the recommendations that Paraguay has received from the Universal System of Protection of Human Rights and the resulting results of the judgments or verdicts of the Inter-American Commission. We also want to add some value to SIMORE, adding the recommendations of, specifically recommendations of the Inter-American Commission. Right now, the system links all the international recommendations on human rights with the SDGs. So right now, we acknowledge that the international agenda has priority goals. One, for example, the protection and defense of human rights, which is connected to the 2030 agenda. As you all know, at the end of the year 2015, with the Millennium Development Goals, we realized that a lot of states had to introduce a new agenda that included the concept of sustainability focused on human rights. So in order to not leave anyone behind, we talk about the protection and defense of human rights when we implemented and developed this development policy. So we created this system that not only allows to give follow-up to the implementation of international recommendations that we have for Paraguay, but we also link them to the Sustainable Development Goals. So the recommendations on the system has two main aspects. The first one, we have the online platform that you can access from anywhere. We have a search tool based on different search criteria. And on the other hand, we have an institutional component. This system of recommendation follow-up works thanks to a very broad network with focal points with all the institutes that have to do with human rights. Right now, as an example, in Paraguay, we have 37 institutions that are in SIMORE. And out of those 37 institutions have assigned 86 focal points that can go into the system. The online platform has information which is relative to the recommendations, which are available to everyone. So everyone can know and read about the measures that are taking place in Paraguay in order to implement the recommendations. The follow-up reports are done recommendation per recommendation. So once we have several actions from the state to implement a particular recommendation, we draft several follow-up reports. So the different state institutions can have very broad information for each recommendation that we receive. Nowadays, in Paraguay SIMORE, we have approximately 1,800 recommendations. And we keep uploading reports on follow-up continuously. SIMORE does not only work to socialize the recommendations that Paraguay received or to inform on how the implementation stage is going. SIMORE has a lot of uses that we're actually still identifying some possibilities. Some uses that we have identified is that SIMORE helps the states when they draft the reports, especially reports for the treaty bodies of the UN. Right now, Paraguay is about to finish their report of midterm for the exam. So we've only used the SIMORE platform. We asked our focal points to upload information on the platform on how the recommendations are being implemented in the recommendations of 2016. So this is our second cycle. This is for the Universal Periodic Review. So we are preparing the reports, and I must say that this system has made it much easier to draft it there as officials. As it was mentioned before, other countries are using this platform as well, and they have shared with us that it's easier to draft the reports thanks to this platform and to share and expose the information with this public access platform. SIMORE has 3 access modalities. The most common one is the public access one. So people who are interested in how Paraguay is implementing their recommendations can access the platform through a public module. But we have 2 other access modalities as well. The first one is also for the focal points of the system and administrators. So we have the officials have a password and an account, and that way we can present all the reports of the recommendation of the implementation of the recommendations. And on the other hand, the version of SIMORE Plus, which is the most recent one, the most innovative one, is basically the same version that we're sharing with the Inter-American Commission. But SIMORE Plus has an access module for civil society. So with this access module, any user who represents a civil society can register into the system with their email account. Of course, we have to go through a clearance stage in order to approve the email account. And based on that clearance, the civil organization, with their user validated by us and all other stakeholders, civil association can now write comments to the recommendations that Paraguay receives regarding human rights and to the reports that we draft and upload to the platform. So once we access, the comments introduced by civil society are presented in a safe way in a private module to guarantee that the information that we receive from the civil association is treated in the most private way and the security measures they need. The interaction made through comments are done through an exchange of private messages that can be done with the focal points of SIMORE. So in my case specifically, if I'm doing follow-up on a recommendation that has to do with the implementation of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the representative of that civil society that has a user account can send a private message to myself regarding that specific recommendation. Afterwards, I can reply to that comment to the representative of the association so that we can have a seamless exchange with the SIMORE focal point and the administration. We were interested in adding that tool because, first of all, because of principles, Paraguay has always seen himself as a state that supports the goal and the work of civil society regarding protection and defense of human rights. So we want a seamless and engaged dialogue. So we wanted to implement this specific tool. And on the other hand, it's very practical to do so because, as you know, civil organizations present their reports to the different international mechanisms of human rights. And in some occasions, we have been requested here in Asunción to open up a direct space of analysis on how the recommendations are being implemented with the civil society. So this is a request that we have received. So once we updated the SIMORE version, we included this step. We would also like to say that there are a lot of benefits once you share this type of information. And I would like to briefly share with you an anecdote that we had with the Universal Periodic Review. Paraguay handed in their first UPR in 2011, and we didn't have that tool before. So the dialogue with civil society wasn't as advanced as it is right now. So in 2011, we had reports. We looked for reports from civil societies and third parties that talked about important information on human rights. However, in some areas, they reported on things that we had already implemented. So it wasn't a lack of compliance, but we had invested time and effort in something that we had already done. So it was already implemented. So it was our responsibility as a state to not have a correct accountability and transparency information tool. So once we gave our UPR, we talked about what had been implemented in Paraguay. The second time we drafted the UPR report, we had a first version of SIMORE. However, we didn't have the SIMORE Plus, which has this space for civil society to comment. However, the previous version had information on the recommendations we received and how we were implementing them. So once we published all the follow-up reports we could to the first cycle of the UPR, when the second cycle started, the civil associations were able to draft a more precise report. And once we had that more precise report, the mechanisms improved so much more. So the states channeled the reports drafted by the civil society, and we were able to draft more specific recommendations thanks to that information, better targeted, and that target issues that are important challenges for Paraguay in the protection of human rights. Therefore, the recommendations of this second UPR for Paraguay have been more beneficial, more specific, and more action-oriented that we need to implement. And I'm also very pleased to say that the reports that we are receiving until now from our focal points are very accurate thanks to the recommendation content, which is also accurate. So it's beneficial. The benefits as a result of the interaction with the civil society have been very broad. So this is a feature that we're just discovering on how the system could work. So once we have the possibility to interact with civil society organizations in a more seamless way in Paraguay, we hope to see the benefit of the accuracy of the reports drafted by state and by the civil society once we have a dialogue on the objectives. So I think once we do so, we will discover new possibilities, not only on drafting reports, but also when sharing information, because we want it to be the most accurate possible. As Noelia mentioned, last week we had a training workshop for the civil society in Paraguay on how to use this tool. During that workshop, we had the opportunity to meet new faces of the civil society who are interested in this topic, and they have successfully registered to a platform. In fact, before coming to this meeting, I had the opportunity to log into the system, and I saw that there are several organizations that recently registered. So we have 35 users now from different civil organizations in the Paraguayan system. I would also like to clarify that SIMORE Plus is a new version of the previous version that we had that was updated in December 1st, 2017. So we had made several adjustments on how it works, and we also gave a training in order to encourage the use of the platform for NGOs last week. So we hope to have a participation flow in our OSC Plus starting these next weeks. And to wrap up my presentation, I would like to say the following. SIMORE Plus is focused on maximizing participation and engagement of civil society organizations. That's why the same tool we use in Paraguay is available to the Inter-American Commission so that they can include the tool into their platform. So hopefully we'll have a larger flow of participation thanks to the Inter-American Commission, and it will be an interesting challenge to see how that works, not only for the Commission, but for the civil society organizations. We are always inviting and encouraging them to participate and engage. In case any questions on how the platform can be used, in the case of platform, we included a brief tutorial which is on the website that indicates step by step how to register and how to interact and how to work the platform. This same tutorial is also available to the Commission, and we trust that it will be used with the same methodology as in Paraguay. So the tutorial will be available permanently, so that you who have listened to this brief presentation in the future, in case you want to share the platform because they're interested in using it, they can see the tutorial. Having said that, I would like to give the floor now to anyone else, and we're open to your questions, comments, or consultations that may arise. Noelia? Thank you so much, Santiago, for your presentation. Unfortunately, we didn't know we had to send the presentation before. This is the first time we used this platform, but we have taken note for future presentations. And I would like to mention that we will send an email following up this presentation, and I see in the chat box that to access the system there is a link for SIMORE Plus. So you can click on it, you can start looking at the system, the platform, you can look up the tutorial, and we will be sending an email to Fernando specifically, an email so that he can continue to collaborate with this process. And just to summarize what Santiago was saying in a more specific way, as the general unit and responsible of human rights in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and in communication with other protective organisms of human rights, that's how we can have a better dialogue with civil society, because the broader the dialogue is, the better it is to discover what we can do as a state. So it's always good to share information in order to come up with solutions in order to protect and defend human rights in our countries, because it has to be done as a teamwork. We have a vision, of course. The NGOs have their own vision. So once we share them, we can improve, and we can have a better way on how the state is doing, how there's follow-up, and how we can dialogue, because we think that's the best way to carry out the protection of human rights. Because without NGOs, without civil society, then of course we wouldn't be able to do our job. So you are an important part in this path. So thank you, and I see there's a question on the PowerPoint, and Fernando will be helping us with that, okay? So yes, we are eager to receive any questions or comments that you have, and we will also share with you our email address, and the online system is available to anyone who wants to access it. Thank you so much for the presentation. As it was mentioned, I will send the PowerPoint to the participants of the webinar. And also the link of SIMORE Plus Paraguay so that everyone can see how the tool works. So I will open the floor now for comments and questions. The floor is open for any questions that you have from the civil society organizations. I will just like to remind you that you have to click on the hand sign on your screen to ask for the floor. Or you can also ask your question on your chat box or ask on the chat box that you want to take the floor. So are there any questions? Okay. So we have a guest from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They just sent a PDF presentation for SIMORE, and I will give the floor to Professor Taramelish.
Thanks. And I have one question regarding the civil society participation in the system, and particularly in the way they communicate directly with the point of agency on a particular recommendation, which I have understood you to say that they can private in regard to the recommendation, and then there will be private message back to them. And I wonder if private message also becomes the public record so that others can see those kinds of issues and take it into account in their own work. And other than that, I just want to thank you for the great work you're doing, establishing the system and making it available to others. There can be greater civil society participation process following implementing human rights recommendations. So thank you.
Gracias. El audio estaba un poco quebrado, entonces.
Thank you. Your audio was a bit off, so I will just repeat your question. The question is if in SIMORE Plus, in the space of dialogue and contribute and inputs with civil society, if the messages sent between the state and the civil society organization, will they be part if they will be published in the system in order to have a more transparent system. And I will give the floor now to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Commission. Okay, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you have the floor. Right. Referring to your question, as I mentioned before, the messages are done privately. We haven't made the decision of publishing the messages yet because we rather have it as a chat, as an exchange of messages from the civil association organizations and the focal points. What we want to do, though, is to use the messages we receive from the civil society to make some adjustments in our follow-up content in order to improve the interpretation of the recommendations that we receive. So, in fact, it's more for a constructive part once we draft our follow-up report as a state. So once we draft our own reports, we've seen that our reports can be improved and can be more accurate thanks to those inputs from the civil society. That's why we're interested in having this space. Another interest we have is that in some occasions, civil society organizations consult us on the reports we draft. So usually, once we meet with representatives of civil association organizations through the Human Rights Network, which is the most largest space we have regarding Human Rights Network, we can receive specific comments on the reach of the follow-up reports that we have in our system. So, in case there is a specific consultation, we would like to take advantage of that space to make that clarification. So, taking into account these two outcomes, we have made the decision to have a private dialogue between civil societies and the state. However, on the other hand, there's another feature in the system. SIMORE is a platform that reports the state's activities. So the information published there, we consider it has to be specifically for the state. So we've done several consultations in Asunción, and we have achieved this effort done with other representatives of the civil association in Asunción. I hope this answered your question. Thank you. Thank you. We have other questions and comments from the civil society organizations? I think we do. And of the Commission. Okay. I want to mention and share with you the expectations and dialogue we've had working on the Inter-American SIMORE. And there's a difference because SIMORE Plus and SIMORE of Paraguay is a self-management tool from a state. The next step that we would like to take with Paraguay to develop the Inter-American SIMORE is to make it a public system of information and a system that could evolve as a supervising system for the recommendations. So we are interested in having the participation of civil association organizations, and so we have thought about an adaptation of this tool so that the participation of civil society will be public, and all the information they give us will be public. Thank you. Thank you so much for that clarification. Do we have other comments or questions? So I'd like to take this opportunity, while we wait other questions and comments, to make a question. The proposal of the Inter-American SIMORE, will they have any space to write about the full or partial compliance for each recommendation? And I'll give the floor to the Commission. Thank you very much, Fernando. That's an important question. We are working on that. The system has two different screens. So first is the recommendation part, and you can click on each recommendation, and then you'll see a follow-up sheet or follow-up worksheet, and it's important for everyone to consult these follow-up worksheet to see how the implementation of the recommendation goes. We're working with Paraguay on having a stage of compliance for each recommendation, but for that we have to see the development of that platform and the methodologic development in order to implement that. So the follow-up, according to Article 51, the Commission right now does this analysis process and classification thanks to the criteria of the state on how they are complying with the recommendation. So once we have that, we will upload it to the system. However, the challenge we're seeing is in relation to other recommendations. For example, the monitoring recommendations or themed reports per country. So we're seeing a challenge on how to advance with the methodology in the Commission so that we can upload all that information into the system. Thank you so much. I received a question in my chat box, and I will read it to you. Who are the 86 focal points in Paraguay? Are there different departments in the state, in the country? How were they chosen, prepared, and what is their engagement level? Does it take a lot of time? It would be good to know how they were assigned so that we could possibly replicate it in other states or in the Inter-American mechanism. Thank you. And I will give the floor now to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you so much for that question. For us, is truly important what you just asked, because the focal points are, in fact, the ones who move the system. We have our state officials who work on each theme, and if it was only on us, we could not have the system as it is. So it's a truly online tool, because without that human factor, it would be impossible to have the outcomes and results we have. So for us, it's more than an information tool. It's a human tool, because our focal point network is crucial to the functioning of the system. And Santiago will explain us in more detail. We do it with all the institutions, public and national institutions. And also when we go to other countries, sometimes we see that those networks are not very strong. So this helps us to strengthen the networks in all the countries we go to. So hopefully Fortunately, in Paraguay, after several years of work, we have strengthened links with our peers, with all the institutions that we've worked with, so I think it's ideal to have a live system. Thank you. It's important to take into account that in Paraguay, we had the first version of SIMORE, which was launched in 2014. So from 2014 to 2018, we have had more and more focal points. Also taking into account those focal points that have been rotating and that have been substitute. So right now, SIMORE has 87 focal points registered and active. In total, we have registered 160 people. Of course, they have changed. Some of them don't work in this anymore, but right now they are 87. Who are these focal points? That's an excellent question. We always encourage the focal points to be technicians that will be in charge of using the platform. So IT technicians that will upload the information. Those are the focal points. Once a focal point uploads the information at a technical level, one of the procedures that SIMORE demands is to have a validation process. So we need to validate the information. So what the focal points do is they draft the report, they print that report, and they present it to their direct authority so that it can be approved. Because all the information uploaded to SIMORE, we consider it to be official state information that has to be backed up by the authority. So we have our focal points that are IT technicians, so when they upload the report, we know that it's validated by their authority, who signs and posts the document, and that is sent to the Ministry of Justice just to have an official backup. However, we do recommend that in some occasions, there are some state institutions that prefer to have their focal point be their department directors or area directors. However, they rarely interact with the system, so they delegate that function to IT technicians, and then they do the same validation process. But in some occasions, we need to ask for a higher level of authorization because we have only one level, but it's always the higher authorization that has to validate the report. Unfortunately, in some occasions we've seen that they need to go to the ministries, but that's a decision that each institution makes and complies with. We're also interested in the content of the information. So basically, if the focal point is a technician or a director, it's not a huge difference in the system. On the other hand, we believe that the system needs a mandate, a special mandate. And we have a presidential decree that establishes the roles of the focal points and their obligations and responsibilities, which is to upload updated information and to continuously interact with the system. Recently, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights carried out an interesting study on the follow-up tools for recommendations and implementations. And I'd like to say that the recommendations that we are presenting right now have been presented by the Office of the High Commissioner. So I hope to have answered your question. Thank you very much. So we have 1 hour now. Susie Talbot was the one who made the question. She works for the ESCR-Net. Perhaps we have time for 1 or 2 more questions, if there are any.
Hola.
Hello.
Supongo que sí.
Hello. Hopefully you hear me.
Gracias. No sé si me ven, No entiendo. Bueno, gracias primero a todos y todas.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fernando. Thank you, Commission. Thank you, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for the presentation and the opportunity to be here. I have a question. Well, my name is Mariana Leon, and I work for the Center for Justice and International Law in Buenos Aires. We have closely worked with Paraguay, and we have used the SIMORE tool, which is a great tool. But I was thinking about what Fernanda was saying, and I share her comment. The end of the tool might be different. For Paraguay, it's a self-management tool managed by the state. So it would be a tool of public information access as well. So I don't know if the Commission has worked on which parts will be replicated and which will not be. So it'd be good to know. And a specific question, I'd like to know if you duplicate any process that the Commission already has in following up with the recommendations, or do you feed from that information, or is it the Commission that administrates that or manages that information and the uploaded information? I heard that you are working on a form and application. So I'd like to know how will that applies in the portal if we want to upload any reports. So basically is to know if it duplicates the process that you already have and in what way. So that would be my main question. And I don't know if I have time, but a question I'm coming up with right now is that a lot of time the Commission's recommendation or different reports, even the agreements, throughout the supervising and compliance process, new commitments and new engagements come up, or more accurate ways to comply with. So I don't know if you have thought of that, or if you will add that, or if it's part of the information you already have. Thank you. Thank you very much. I will give the floor to the Ministry to the Commission. Thank you so much for your questions. These are very important questions, and of course we have thought of them, and I think that it's a topic that will give a lot of discussion for the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights. First of all, we are not duplicating any processes or information. The idea is to have the first stage of SIMORE, to have a database. So SIMORE has the possibility to link documents. For example, the recommendations are linked to the UN reports, so we have the official source. So the best way to do it is to have those links so that we can have the follow-up commission reports. That's something we're working on technically in order to not duplicate the work. So once we have a process, a follow-up process that is done in the framework of the cases. So we're not thinking of duplicating the process. Perhaps in the future we will have a software development dynamic to see how it already works, or to have databases that can communicate within the systems tool. However, the main idea we're working on right now is to have a link to the follow-up reports from the Commission that are published in the annual report. So in the specific cases, we would not have the follow-up in SIMORE. SIMORE will just be the public database of those recommendations and how the follow-up analysis is going. And another interesting question you made, I think it's a topic that we still have to think about. For example, what to do with the compliance agreements that are signed in the implementation process framework for recommendations. Specifically, how do we do the link from the follow-up report? So I would imagine that information would be there, but not the specific clauses that are in the compliance agreement. So at first we thought about the recommendations, but I think we can discuss that topic on how to publish the clauses or the clauses for the follow-up agreement. So thank you for bringing that up. And it would be interesting to hear from the system on how to give transparency to that information so that information can be useful for whoever wants information on that system. Thank you very much. So we have now 1 hour in this webinar. I know we have a bit of a delay at the beginning, and also take into account the time of the interpreters. We will wrap up. I don't know if someone would like to say some finishing words. If not, we will wrap up this online session. And hopefully this will be one of many sessions in developing this tool. I hope it was useful to you all to listen to this presentation, and we thank the participation of everyone. So any last few words? Yes. We would just like to thank you for this information and to have this brief presentation on how SIMORE will work with the Commission, and thank you to the ESCR-Net for helping us with the drafting of documents, the strategy, the ongoing dialogue on how to improve this tool. And thank you to the State of Paraguay for their engagement, for participating with the Commission, and for doing this presentation, and to support us in developing the Inter-American SIMORE system. Thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations for this initiative. for Paraguay. Thank you for this informative session. And the minister will take the floor. I would just like to thank the opportunity to Paraguay to show this system. We're open to any questions or comments that the civil society organizations might have in this ongoing dialogue that we want to have with them. And hopefully the system will provide us a more seamless dialogue. And as Fernanda was saying, thank you to VoiceBoxer to be able to listen to your ideas and comments. And of course, this will be one of many sessions on SIMORE that hopefully will be open to everyone. So thank you. Thank you to the ESCR-Net team, and have a great day. Thank you. I will send a follow-up email to this session as well as the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, everyone. We will keep in touch, and hopefully we will see each other again. Thank you, and have a great day.